Good afternoon, everyone. Story about frozen geese in Xinjiang dropping temperatures, not really South Dakota. We'll dive into it. Freezing fog, Shanghai, first time in 150 years. Same front gonna freeze, well, making Taipei extremely cold. Better pictures of snow in the desert from last week, as well as floods across Algeria. Massive blaze in a cattle barn, Illinois. Lithium batteries up in smoke. 900 tons. Slovakian farmers along with the Polish farmers. Game on, blockades blocking Ukraine. Which jobs have a future? Well, number 8, agricultural equipment operators. If you're looking to the future. And as always, when you're looking through the news, got to be discerning. A lot of freezing temperatures here in Xinjiang, record coldest ever for February, and just a huge amount of records dropping. So there's going to be other stories that come out about wildlife and herd animals, etc. But Xinjiang, this freeze is no joke. Harshest cold spell in over 6 decades. That's 60 years for you and me. And then these stories were coming out about all these birds getting frozen in the water because the temperature dropped so fast. And, and I was like, that sounds kind of strange. So I wanted to dive into the story a little further to see, what was this all about. Turns out it's in South Dakota, not Xinjiang. And the snow goose, again, nobody really has an explanation of how this happened. 2024. But what's the real story behind the snow goose and all the birds that were frozen in the ice? Whatever way you look at a location on the planet, it is still bizarre, unusual, and shows something's gone drastically wrong with nature's compass. And you can check out the original videos here on Instagram and the South Dakota Post. I linked everything below so you could trace down those links yourself. But these other links pointing to this event being in Xinjiang makes a great headline, but you got to have the right location for these stories. But in Xinjiang and Mongolia, as that front swept through with Category 5 hurricane dust storm winds and a blizzard along with those extreme winds, Mongolia, 600,000 farm animals succumb to the cold. But we see the same thing sometimes in these real heavy blizzards. Even the cows have trouble staying warm. That's in the United States as well. We see herds sometimes frozen in extreme winds and blizzard conditions. That's just when you're out exposed in the elements, even the animals, nature does take its course, unfortunately. Now, speaking of something strange also, Shanghai blowing freezing rain and ice fog across the taller buildings in the city. This is Shanghai in China. 150 years they haven't seen anything like this. And this system of weather fronts that's been pushing through Asia is something to behold. It is on the borderline level of making new categories for such events. The snow and ice covered Shanghai Tower Pudong. There's a huge amount of stories coming out. Obviously, it's through the Asian media here. Wanted to dive into it. You can check out BNN. Shanghai icy surprise. I guess it is. Surprise. The Fed took the punch bowl away from the party again. The stock market's been betting on March rate cuts, but not so fast. Is this why JP Morgan and UBS are calling for a 23% drop in the S&P? The recession indicator's ringing its most severe alarm in 40 years. Call the proud Americans, the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Mention the Adapt 2030 channel. You're going to get some great in-class service. Also, Patriot Gold Group has a no fee for life IRA where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver. No fee for life IRA on qualifying rollovers. Give them a call, 888-546-7020. And now on with the video. But as that cold front transits through, and most of you know I'm traveling in Taiwan for the moment, here 11 degrees Celsius, which is low 50s, borderline 40s. It'll definitely get in the 30s in the mountains. But look how people are dressed when it's in the 50s. Just this tropical nation here, people aren't used to this kind of cold. So it is making news, even though it might not seem so absurd. And I was out wearing a T-shirt because where I am in the South here, and they're like, "You're wearing a T-shirt today? I can't believe it." But it was rather warm for me coming from areas that were colder. But I guess it's all perspective. And speaking of perspective, how about record flooding in Oman? The weather tracker flashing UAE floods all the way to Oman. Deserts of Saudi Arabia also getting ripped with snows of all things. This story had been circulating last week, but there weren't too many videos, and I finally started to stumble across a few here as I'm looking for extreme weather sites. Jabal al-Laus. Also Algeria getting in on the flood action as well. That is a truck coming toward you there in the flooded streets, so you can see about how deep it is. So for these areas that don't get much rainfall or much ice forming on buildings, it's going to take a toll on the infrastructure, that's for sure. And speaking of more heavy snows, in addition to Alaska that we talked about last week, snowfall in Jammu and Kashmir, 4 feet. This is kind of unusual too, because 4 feet, that could be an entire season worth of snow, let alone one springtime snow dust here or a snow pounding. Everything's paralyzed in the mountains. There's really nothing moving at the moment. Even this event occurred over the 19th, 20th, and 21st. They're still unable to get anything in or out unless you're walking. And as we see across the world, it does seem to be extremes ramping up. That's noticeable for everybody in front of everybody's eyes. So is this the year of the rollover, the changeover? And we see a lot of people getting ready to dive beneath the earth into their bunkers. Seems a lot of electromagnetic activities happening on the sun, these large solar flares. There's something happening at the end of the year here that is called the event. Everybody's planning for it. Governments are positioning for it. Tides should get higher as we roll toward October. When I say that, 2 to 3 times higher tides, we're, a week or so coming toward the end of October. How would that disrupt global shipping is the question. And really, what is everybody preparing for in moving goods across the planet? That's more the question. Because you're seeing it and starting to notice it. So let's take a look at these X flares, those 3 X flares a few days back, occurring at 3:32 in the morning, Central Time. And the outage just started, mobile networks across the United States. So I thought I'd bring you here. I did this a couple days in the video. Those 4 gas giants are starting to line up into a square that hasn't been seen since 79 AD. Now the apex of that electromagnetic coupling, or whatever it turns out to be, a transference, I'm not sure. It's an anomaly. The event, October 23rd of this year, October 2024. And one thing to note as our orbit continues around anti-clockwise, counterclockwise, as we pull in front of the sun at the 8 o'clock position, those 4 gas giants plus the sun will be behind us, so anything gravitationally is going to get pulled right into the face of our planet. Expect more bolides, fireballs, comets, meteors, and anything from space transiting through our atmosphere. We'll see an uptick in that, definitely. So during the time of the outage, here's your KP index. So that really didn't have anything to do with particle charge. That was pure electromagnetism. It was electricity, my electric universe fans out there. Taking a look, if you got sunglasses, the sunspot coming toward Earth facing today and tomorrow, you'll be able to see that with your naked eye. It's so large. Look for it at sunset. But if that lets loose on an X-flare, that's directly Earth facing. And here's the thing about AR3590. It is so interlaced and interlooped with different polarities. This thing is a mess waiting to happen. Usually you'll have just one area next to another, not interlooping. Different umbras in there, positive, negative, positive, negative. This is an anomaly in itself, the way this thing is stacked. Ben's been covering this thing for a few days, just off his rails here, waiting for something to happen, biting the fingernails. And this is what the end little spiral shows for us on the 27th. That spike there is going to be A large amount of auroras as the particles come ripping down our field lines. Now, this is going to be a glancing blow, not a direct hit onto us. And this wasn't even from those X-flares from a few days back that were responsible for the phone outages. This was a filament that came down, a hydro flare. It snapped off and came toward us. But this Earth-facing sunspot, let's see how this plays out over the next few days. Now, speaking of fires, we have a cattle farm here, cattle barn on fire, Rock Island, Illinois. Multiple buildings, more destruction to the food supply. We jump over to southern France, where we see 900 tons of lithium batteries on fire. Not sure the state on that, if they've extinguished it yet. It's been a fair few days since they've been fighting that, because all eyes have been on the farmers' protests, especially in France. But now, Slovakia is kicking it off. They're absolutely tired of the dumped grain coming in and disrupting their lives as well. Everywhere you look, the entire European Union is uniting against this destruction of their livelihoods, from taxes to dumped grains to regulations, penalties, fees. They're done with it. And they realize they control the food supply, and who controls the food supply controls the civilization. So the Slovakian farmers are out near the Czech border now, also stopping any types of transit. Ukrainian grains, Ukrainian foods. We see the same thing happening in France and Spain. France has taken a little more to the Uber by stopping Spanish semis inbound and throwing all the goods in the foodstuffs out the back of the truck, really on the highway there. It's getting to the point where if you wanted the food supply to stop, we're doing it to ourselves. That's the thing. That's the insane thing. The whole game plan of this thing here, French protesters operating, cruising around Paris, snail's pace. And the Polish farmers, they're starting to get even more organized than they were even a few days ago, stopping trains on the tracks and pulling the unloading chutes open, and that's grain just spilling out of the rail cars everywhere. Now keep in mind, grains are one thing, but animal fodder is another, so it takes a fine oiled machine to bring food to your table. When there's disruptions, even in this, the fodder for the animals, there'll be a disruption to the food in your table. And again, just a wider view here. The food supply of Europe is being stopped. Now it's under the guise of the finger pointing. It's them, it's them, it's them. Look how nefarious that is. They've turned humanity against each other to turn off our own food supply against each other. So if you point higher up into the ivory towers and say they're going to try to stop the food supply and starve the planet, well, it's actually us that's doing the dirty work for them against us, humanity against the ivory tower crowd. Look at the metrics, look at the mechanics of this, is how it's working. They don't have to do anything except move a few chess pieces across, change the colors on the fabric that's flying in the air, and dump a little bit of cheap grain, and look what's happening. They just need to raise taxes till people get angry. And everybody on the ground is going to do the dirty work for them. The end result is the food supply is stopping. Wasn't that the plan all along? But it's being carried out by those who are actually producing the food. Now, at what point do those who produce food start to make demands? Then the game changes forever. Once they see that super easy secret sauce of you withhold the food, and leaders will do anything at that point to start the food, because they're going to be dragged out of their plush offices, holding onto the golden faucet handles in the bathroom. Let me go. It'll be turning into something just like that. And since spring is here, consider growing your own food. It's such a good idea to consider that right now. True Leaf Market, heirloom organic seeds for any grow zone on the planet. That link's in the description box below with tonight's videos, images, graphics, and Patriot Gold. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. See you next time. Bye for now.